back over there in that
You want
west
to get
part
closer
there.
so you can hear, Elaine? Now, don't be afraid to sit in the benches.
No.
My son said if people aren't sitting in them, I'm not moving them next year.
Oh, I'm going.
Well, you better,
So
you better
sit.
move
Need
like
some though, don't you?
Maybe I'll sit then.
Yes, please do.
You tell her this one's been used.
Yes.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm James Benjamin Barbur. I'm speaking to you today. My wife and I are married way up north, and it'll be quite a walk. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk in front of the grave of my daughters, Dolores Catherine Barbur White Batipka. I was born on June 22nd, 1897, southeast of Exeter, Nebraska. In my early years, I lived in Geneva and attended school in Geneva, as my father, E.J. Barbur, was the Fillmore County clerk. Later, I attended the Evergreen Rural School near our farm through the 8th grade. It was a one-room schoolhouse. I then worked on the farm, but I never finished high school. I did go to Lincoln and attended business school for a while. In my free time, I started courting the pretty Voles girl who lived 2.5 miles east of our farm, south of Friend. I usually stayed late into the evening because I figured the horse knew the way home. One night the horse turned in the wrong lane, and it took me a while to figure out where I was, but I eventually made it home. After being a regular pest in the Voles household, I proposed to Louise, and she said yes. My wife, Mary Louise Voles Barbur, was born April 9th, 1897, on her grandparents' farm, south of Friend, in the dugout soddy her grandparents had homesteaded in. She was known by Louise, her middle name, for most of her adult life. She moved to the new place/farm when she was 10 years old. She grew up on the farm and graduated from Friend High School in 1915. She also had attended a one-room school south of Friend. We were married on July 18, 1918 in the Voles family home by the Reverend Fulton McKay. We started our life together in my grandfather Barbur's homestead on the farm south of Exeter. I had a desire to learn the floral trade, so we had a farm sale and moved to Lincoln, where I worked for Fry and Fry Company, a greenhouse and flower shop, for about a year. In 1926, we heard that the Eaton property was for sale in Geneva. It had a greenhouse on it and a house, so we bought it and started Barbur Floral Company. After starting Barbur Floral, we struggled, as all new businesses do, and we're finally making some headway when in 1929 the stock market and the economy tanked and the Great Depression started. You talk about tough times. If you didn't need it, you didn't buy it. And even if you needed it, you usually didn't have the money for it, so you either improvised or did without. But thanks to hard work, perseverance, and a friendly man named Earl Wilkins, we survived the tough times and pulled through. We were blessed with 4 children: Dolores Catherine Barbur White Batipka, James Voles Barbur, Mary Lynn Barbur Johnson, and Charles Eaton. All of our children graduated from Geneva High School. The Depression and the Dust Bowl years were tough. It just wouldn't rain. Bush water was used to water flowers and vegetable growth. We often slept outside on hot summer nights. Louise would hang wet sheets and cloths over windows to catch the dust. Things were just starting to look up when Japan and Germany led us into World War II. We fixed up the basement of our home as an apartment and rented it to officers from the newly built Fairmont Army Air Corps base north of town. I became a justice of the peace, and several couples were married in our living room, with myself officiating, Louise furnishing flowers, Mary providing music, and Charlie, or a neighbor, as a witness. We started adding more greenhouses and structures as our business grew. We began growing our own cut flowers and plants. My son Charlie and I would plant flowers in front of the headquarters building at the Fairmont Air Base. It always puzzled me that we had to get a pass every time we went on base. I guess they didn't or couldn't trust anyone. I was very involved in my community. As mentioned before, I was a justice of the peace. I served on the school board, the city council, was mayor for 2 years. I was a director of the Nebraska Florist Society, a volunteer fireman. I helped to establish the county hospital. I was a mason and a shriner, an Oddfellow, a Knight of Pythias, and was local representative for the Salvation Army. I'm not real sure when I was ever home. Louise and I were both longtime members of the First Congregational United Church of Christ. One memory is that during the war years when things were tight, I bought coal sweepings to burn in our boiler. It's cheaper than regular coal. It's what's left in the bottom of the rail car. It's tough to scoop and tough to load, but it's more economical. During cold nights, I usually check the boiler every 2 hours. A boiler eats coal like a teenager eats pizza. You can't fill it up. Then in 1941, a week before Memorial Day, one of our major flower holidays, a hailstorm with baseball-sized hail wiped out all of the glass in our greenhouses and crops inside, causing damage and destruction. It took a few years to recover from that, but again, hard work and perseverance paid off. Probably some insurance money too. Finally, after 30 plus years in the floral business, we sold it to our son Charles in 1959. We built our retirement home in northeast Geneva at 644 North 11th Street. That's a long ways from the flower shop. Our home was built by the Oliva brothers from Milligan. In retirement, we started square dancing, traveled the Alaska Highway, went to Europe, and just relaxed. Louise enjoyed retirement as she worked as hard as I did in the business, bookkeeping, designing flowers, raising kids, and helping with grandkids. In my retirement years, I would often take grandkids for a ride in the car to look at nature or crops or just to get out of town. Often these trips would lead to Burris, where the grandkids would get a bottle of pop, and I'd have a couple of beers while discussing current events with Earl Manning. This is a quick little florist story concerning myself and Paul Farmer. This would be PR's dad. I would make a casket spray for a funeral and would purposely use long stem flowers in it, especially gladiolas, which would hang out over the lid in the deceased person. Paul would come along and snap them off to shorten it. That's when the argument started. I'd tell him not to do that, and his reply was, well, don't make it so damn long. This went on for many years until we both retired and ran out of things to argue about. However, we did remain good friends. In retirement, I would also stop by the greenhouse and sporadically check up on things and help wherever needed. I would often start seeds for spring flowers and vegetables that I wanted to try for my house and garden to be planted when ready. We had quite the neighborhood on North 11th. The Wilkins, the Ashbys, the Bebaws, the Sloans were all friends, as well as the Brinkmans, Keisters, and Ewalds. We belonged to the Circle 8 Square Dance Club, which took us to many events, especially Kirkwood Lodge in Missouri. I suffered a stroke in 1974, which affected my motor skills somewhat, but they let me have a local driver's license so I could still get around. I had to learn to read and write again, which is no small feat when you're in your 70s. I passed from this life on October 2nd, 1977, after reaching 80 years of age. Louise remained in our home until she had issues with her back and was hospitalized for treatment. She suffered a stroke in the hospital and passed from this life on November 8th, 1983, reaching 86 years of age. We were both buried here in the Geneva Cemetery at the North End. Two of our children, Mary and Charles, and their spouses are interred in the same area. Our son Charlie ran Barbur Floral for 47 years until he retired in 2006. He sold the business to his son Charlie Cougar and his wife Deb, who operated to this day. Some random thoughts as I look down on all this and reminisce. It's amazing how the floral industry has changed and evolved in 96 years. My son Charlie and I would use good black Nebraska loam soil for our soil mix. It would be dug, stored, steam sterilized, and mixed with peat moss and perlite and used to grow crops. Due to herbicide contamination and weight concerns, now soilless mixes are used. We used to grow all of our own cut flowers. Nowadays, almost any flower is available year-round. I used to plant around 10,000 gladiolus bulbs and several rows of baby's breath in the summer. And wouldn't you know it, no one would have the courtesy to die when the flowers got ready. Now you can get about any flower you want shipped to Geneva in 24 hours from worldwide sources. Plastic pots and trays have replaced clay and wood ones. Hazardous pesticides now are rarely used, and natural insect controls are used instead. New colors and varieties of bedding and vegetable plants are introduced each year with greater disease resistance. Our greenhouses were once covered in glass, but now polycarbonate is used. It's the same material eyeglasses are made with. Funerals have changed. Cremation was once the exception, but is now the rule. Services are much more casual than formal. Weddings are much more casual and not as flashy as in the past. Barbur family has been both blessed and privileged to provide floral products and greenhouse plants and flowers to Geneva and the surrounding counties for 96 years.
Did your grandpa write some of that?
I wrote it.
Oh, well, such a sense of humor.
A lot of it come out of there. My Uncle Jim Barbur, before he passed, he made that up. And that goes all the way back into 1600s Russia.
Oh, wow.
And England and Germany and
You said that Jim bought the Eaton property.
Eaton property.
That's who lived in the house before
Yep.
you lived there.
Yep.
Did he have a greenhouse also?
His wife had the original greenhouse is still there. That's the first one you walk into. His wife used it like as a hobby greenhouse.
So it wasn't a business.
No.
It was just a.
More of a hobby, and I think Eaton, as I understand, was like a local plumber or something like that.
Okay.
So, and I think they probably used heat off of their house just to keep that. Because Grandpa didn't put a boiler in until later on.
Okay.
The boiler came from Iowa, I know that.
See, there's a grandson, and there's a
I
grandson.
went over to Iowa and picked up the boiler with a truck
Okay.
from the farm. We went over to Iowa and picked up the boiler and brought it back. That was after they were married.
Okay.
Where is
Family stories.
where is it located now? The green.
Greenhouse is on 5th Street.
Okay.
We're down on 5th Street, about 4 blocks south. We're on the west side of the street.
Because I remember growing up, I remember a place, but I don't know. I thought it was
Wasn't long enough.
further that way, but is there more than one, or it's just
No. What you might have saw was Geneva Auto Grill.
maybe it
They
said
grew tomatoes.
that's probably what it
They
is.
grew tomatoes.
Okay.
So
So when did you grow up here?
We used